The blood on her dress had dried to a rusty brown by the time she stumbled into the dusty town of Redemption, Texas. And every soul on Main Street turned to stare at the battered woman who looked like death itself had chased her across the prairie. It was the summer of 1876, and the heat shimmered off the wooden boardwalks like waves on an ocean. Sarah Mitchell's legs threatened to give out beneath her as she clutched the porch railing of the general store, her right eye swollen shut and her lips split open. She had walked for 2 days straight after stealing away in the dead of night, leaving behind the husband who had promised to love and cherish her but had delivered nothing but fists and fury. "Ma'am, you all right?" The voice came from somewhere to her left, deep and cautious. Sarah flinched violently, stumbling backward and nearly falling into the dirt street. Her good eye went wide with terror and she raised her trembling hands in front of her face. "Please," she whispered. "Please, I will do better. I will not burn the bacon again." The man who had spoken froze in his tracks. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that touched his collar. His blue shirt was dusty from the trail, and a worn leather vest hung open over his chest. A gun belt sat low on his hips, but his hands were empty, and now he held them very still at his sides. "Easy now," he said softly, as though speaking to a spooked horse. "Nobody here is going to hurt you," but Sarah was not listening. She was back in the farmhouse outside of Austin, where every sound of boots on floorboards meant pain was coming, where every raised voice preceded a blow. Where Thomas Mitchell's rage was as certain as the sunrise. The cowboy took a step closer, and Sarah's knees buckled. He instinctively reached out to catch her, his hand rising quickly, and that was when it happened. Sarah saw that hand coming toward her and let out a small, broken sound, flinching so hard she cracked her shoulder against the post behind her. The cowboy saw her flinch when he raised his hand. He lowered it slow and said, "I won't ever hit." The words hung in the hot Texas air between them. Sarah's breath came in short, panicked gasps, but something in his tone made her look at him properly for the first time. His brown eyes were steady and kind, filled with a sadness that spoke of understanding rather than pity. "My name is Cole Brennan," he said quietly, keeping his distance now. "And I give you my word, ma'am, I will not lay a hand on you except to help, if you will let me." Sarah wanted to believe him. Lord, how she wanted to believe that there were still good men in the world. But Thomas had been charming once too, back when he was courting her in Austin. He had brought her flowers and spoken sweetly. The first time he hit her was 3 months after their wedding, and he had cried afterward and sworn it would never happen again. That was 4 years ago, and the promises had long since turned to ash. "I need water," she managed to whisper. "Please?" Cole nodded slowly. "The boarding house is just down the street. Miss Henrietta runs it. She is a good woman and she will take care of you. Will you let me walk you there?" Sarah hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. Cole gestured for her to go ahead of him, keeping several feet of distance between them. She noticed he deliberately kept his hands visible, moving slowly and predictably. It was such a small thing, but it made something tight in her chest loosen just a fraction. The boarding house was a 2-story building with a wide front porch and cheerful yellow curtains in the windows. Cole climbed the steps ahead of Sarah this time and knocked on the door. When it opened, a woman in her 50s appeared, her gray hair pinned up neatly and her apron spotless despite the afternoon hour. "Cole Brennan, what brings you to my door?" Then her eyes landed on Sarah, and her expression transformed from curious to fierce in an instant. "Lord have mercy. Child, come inside right now." Henrietta Wilson had seen enough in her years running the boarding house to know exactly what she was looking at. She ushered Sarah inside with gentle efficiency, already calling out instructions for hot water and clean cloths. Cole remained on the porch, his hat in his hands. "I will pay for her room," he said, "and anything else she needs." Henrietta gave him a long, measuring look. "That is decent of you, Cole, but you best not come around too much at first. That girl is terrified and she does not need a man hovering no matter how good your intentions." "Yes, ma'am," Cole said. "But if she needs anything, anything at all." I will send word." Henrietta's expression softened. "You have a good heart. Your mama would be proud." Cole settled his hat back on his head and descended the steps. He had ridden into Redemption 3 days ago, looking for work after spending the spring driving cattle up from San Antonio. The town was small but prosperous, with good people who minded their own business. He had planned to stay only long enough to resupply before heading north, but now those plans felt less certain. He could not stop thinking about the fear in Sarah's eyes, about the way she had flinched. Cole knew that kind of terror did not come from a single bad day. It was carved deep, worn into a person's bones by repeated cruelty. His own father had been a hard man, quick with his belt and quicker with his temper. Cole had spent his childhood protecting his younger sister from the worst of it, and he had sworn when he left home at 16 that he would never raise his hand in anger to anyone weaker than himself. The memory of his sister was a familiar ache. Emma had died of fever when she was just 14, and Cole had been away on a cattle drive. He had not made it home in time to say goodbye, and the guilt of that still sat heavy on his heart 9 years later. He walked to the livery stable where he had boarded his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Rusty. The animal nickered in greeting, and Cole stroked his neck absently, his mind still on the woman at the boarding house. "You look troubled, friend." Cole turned to find the sheriff leaning against the stable doorway. Jack Thornton was a solidly built man in his 40s with a thick mustache and sharp eyes that missed little. He wore his badge pinned to a brown vest, and his hand rested casually on his gun belt. "Sheriff," Cole acknowledged. "Heard you brought in a woman who looked like she had been through hell," Thornton said. "She causing trouble?" "No," Cole said sharply. Then more calmly, "She needs help, not questions." Thornton studied him. "A husband do that to her, I reckon so. He likely to come looking for her." Cole's jaw tightened. "I reckon he might." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Then I will keep an eye out, but Cole, if there is trouble, you let me handle it. We do not need any vigilante justice in Redemption." "I am not looking for trouble, Sheriff." "Good. But I have seen that look in a man's eyes before. You are feeling protective. Nothing wrong with that, but keep it legal." Cole watched the sheriff walk away, then turned back to Rusty. The horse butted his shoulder gently, and Cole smiled despite himself. "Yeah, I know. I should mind my own business. But you did not see her, boy. You did not see how scared she was." Up at the boarding house, Sarah sat in a copper tub while Henrietta gently washed the dirt and blood from her skin. The hot water stung the cuts and bruises, but Sarah barely felt it. She was numb, her mind struggling to accept that she had actually escaped. That Thomas was not going to burst through the door at any moment. "You are safe here," Henrietta said softly, working soap through Sarah's tangled brown hair. "I have been running this boarding house for 20 years, and I have helped more than one woman in your situation. Your husband does not know where you are, does he?" "No," Sarah whispered. "I did not tell anyone I was leaving, I just ran." "Good girl. What is your name, child?" "Sarah." "Sarah Mitchell." Henrietta's hands paused for just a moment, then continued their gentle washing. "Well, Sarah, you do not have to be Sarah Mitchell anymore if you do not want to be. Plenty of women come west and take new names. Start fresh." The idea sent a flutter of something that might have been hope through Sarah's chest. A new name, a new life. Could it really be that simple? "I do not have any money," she said quietly. "That man, Cole, said he would pay, but I cannot accept charity forever." "We will figure it out," Henrietta said firmly. "For now, you just focus on healing. Can you tell me how badly you are hurt? Do you need a doctor?" Sarah mentally catalogued her injuries. The black eye, the split lip, the bruises on her ribs and arms. Her left wrist ached where Thomas had twisted it, but she could move her fingers. Nothing felt broken this time. "I will be all right," she said. "I have had worse." The matter-of-fact way she said it made Henrietta's mouth tighten with anger, but she kept her voice gentle. "You will never have to endure worse again. I promise you that." After the bath, Henrietta helped Sarah into a clean nightgown and led her to a small room on the second floor. The bed had a real mattress, not just a straw tick, and the sheets were crisp and white. A breeze came through the open window, carrying the scent of prairie grass and freedom. "You rest now," Henrietta said. "I will bring up some soup in a while. You need food in your belly." But Sarah was already asleep before Henrietta closed the door, exhausted beyond measure. She slept for 16 hours straight, and when she finally woke, the sun was streaming through the windows and she could hear the sounds of the town coming to life below. For the first few seconds, she did not remember where she was, and panic seized her. Then the memories came flooding back and she sat up slowly, her body aching but her mind clearer than it had been in days. There was a knock at the door and Sarah tensed. "It is just me, dear," Henrietta called. "May I come in?" "Yes." Henrietta entered with a tray of food, eggs, toast, bacon, and coffee. "You slept through dinner and all of the night. You must be starving." Sarah's stomach growled in response, and she accepted the tray gratefully. The food was simple but delicious, and she tried not to eat too quickly, even though she wanted to devour everything in sight. "Cole Brennan stopped by earlier," Henrietta said casually, sitting in the chair by the window. "He wanted to know how you were doing. I told him you were resting and that I would pass along his regards." Sarah's hands stilled on her fork. "Why is he being so kind? He does not know me." "Some people are just decent, I suppose. Cole has been in and out of redemption for a few years now, always respectful, always fair. He helped Doc Matheson when some drunks were causing trouble last spring, and he did not ask for anything in return. Just did what needed doing and went on his way." Sarah absorbed this information slowly. In her experience, men did not do things out of simple kindness. There was always a price to be paid eventually, but she wanted to believe that Cole might be different, needed to believe it, perhaps. "I need to find work," she said. "I cannot stay here without paying my way. Can you cook?" "Yes, and so I can clean and do laundry too." Henrietta nodded thoughtfully. "The restaurant down the street is looking for help. Martha Jenkins runs it, and she is a good woman, fair pay and decent hours. I could speak to her on your behalf if you would like." "I would appreciate that," Sarah said quietly. "Thank you for everything." "You do not need to thank me, child. We women have to look out for each other." 3 days later, Sarah started working at Martha's restaurant. The work was hard and the hours were long, but Martha was kind and the other waitress, a cheerful woman named Lucy, was friendly without being nosy. Sarah kept her head down and focused on her tasks, grateful for the distraction and the purpose. She saw Cole a few times in passing. He always tipped his hat politely but never approached her directly, seeming to understand that she needed space. She noticed that he was working at the livery stable, and once she saw him helping to repair the roof of the church. He moved through town with quiet competence, and people seemed to like and respect him. One evening, about 2 weeks after Sarah arrived in Redemption, a storm rolled in. The wind howled and rain lashed the windows of the boarding house. Sarah lay in her bed, listening to the thunder and trying not to let it transport her back to the farmhouse, where storms always made Thomas mean. She was almost asleep when she heard shouting from downstairs. Male voices, angry and demanding. Sarah's blood turned to ice. "I know she is here. My wife ran off and someone said they saw a woman matching her description in this town, Thomas. He had found her." Sarah scrambled out of bed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She looked around wildly for somewhere to hide, but the room was small and there were few options. The voices were getting louder, and she could hear Henrietta's firm tones trying to refuse him entry. "Sir, I do not know what you are talking about. Now you need to leave before I call the sheriff." "The hell I will. That is my wife, and I have a right to take her home." Sarah heard heavy boots on the stairs and panic overwhelmed her. She ran to the window and looked down. It was too high to jump, but there was a porch roof below that might hold her weight. She was pushing the window open wider when her door burst inward. Thomas Mitchell stood in the doorway, his face red with rage and rain dripping from his coat. He was a big man, thick through the shoulders and chest, with thinning brown hair and cold gray eyes. Those eyes locked on Sarah and filled with triumphant fury. "There you are, you worthless little tramp. Did you really think you could run from me?" Sarah backed against the window, her whole body shaking. "Please, Thomas, please just let me go." "Let you go," he laughed, a cruel sound. "You are my wife, my property, and you are coming home right now so I can teach you what happens to women who do not obey their husbands." He lunged toward her, and Sarah screamed. But before Thomas could reach her, someone grabbed him from behind and hauled him backward with enough force to send him crashing into the hallway wall. Cole Brennan stood in the doorway, his face harder than granite. The lady said no. Thomas recovered quickly, his hand going to the knife at his belt. "This is none of your business, cowboy. That is my wife. She is a human being and she does not want to go with you." Cole's voice was deadly calm. "So you are going to turn around and leave right now?" "The hell I am." Thomas drew his knife and charged. Cole was faster. He sidestepped the attack and delivered a solid punch to Thomas's jaw that snapped his head back. Thomas staggered but did not go down. He swung the knife wildly, and Cole had to retreat a step to avoid being gutted. "Sheriff Thornton is on his way," Henrietta called from the stairs. "You hear me, Thomas Mitchell? The law is coming." Thomas ignored her, too focused on trying to kill Cole. They grappled in the narrow hallway, neither gaining much advantage. Cole was trying not to seriously hurt the other man, but Thomas had no such compunctions. The knife sliced across Cole's forearm, drawing blood, and Cole's expression went cold. He caught Thomas's wrist and twisted hard. The knife clattered to the floor, and Cole followed up with a knee to the gut that doubled Thomas over. Then he grabbed the back of Thomas's collar and the seat of his pants and physically threw him down the stairs. Thomas tumbled down in a tangle of limbs, landing in a heap at the bottom just as Sheriff Thornton burst through the front door, gun drawn. "What in the blazes is going on here?" "That man attacked me," Cole said, breathing hard. "He broke into this boarding house looking for his wife, and when she refused to go with him, he tried to gut me with a knife." Thornton looked at Thomas, who was groaning and trying to sit up, then at Cole's bleeding arm. "That true, Mitchell? She is my wife," Thomas spat. "I have every right. You have the right to shut your mouth before you say something that gets you locked up," Thornton interrupted. "In Texas, breaking and entering is a crime and assault is a crime. I do not care if she is your wife or the Queen of England. The law says a man can discipline his own wife. The law also says I can throw you in jail for disturbing the peace and attempted murder." Thornton gestured to his deputy who had appeared behind him. "Lock him up. We will sort this out in the morning." As they dragged Thomas away, still protesting, Cole leaned against the wall and examined his arm. The cut was not deep, but it was bleeding freely. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, white-faced and trembling. "You are hurt," she whispered. "It is just a scratch," Cole said, but Henrietta was already bustling forward with clean cloth. "Sit down before you fall down," she ordered. "Sarah, fetch my medicine kit from the kitchen." Sarah hurried to obey, grateful for something to do. When she returned, Cole was sitting at the dining table while Henrietta cleaned the wound. He did not flinch or complain, just watched Sarah with those steady brown eyes. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "If you had not been here, I was here," Cole said simply, "and he will not hurt you again." "How did you know to come?" "I was checking on the horses at the livery when the storm hit. Saw a man who looked like trouble heading this way. Something told me to follow." Sarah's eyes burned with tears. "You could have been killed." "But I was not," he smiled slightly. "And neither were you." "That is what matters." Henrietta finished bandaging his arm and stepped back. "You need to go see Doc Matheson in the morning, make sure that does not get infected. For now, you should get some rest." Cole stood, settling his hat back on his head. "I will be at the livery if you need me." "Sheriff will probably have questions in the morning." "Cole," Sarah said, and he paused at the door. "Why are you doing this, helping me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because somebody should have helped my sister when she needed it and nobody did, and because it is the right thing to do." He tipped his hat. "Good night, ladies." After he left, Sarah stood staring at the closed door. Henrietta put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That is a good man," she said softly. "One of the rare ones." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She had spent so long believing that all men were like Thomas, but Cole was showing her something different. Something she had thought was lost forever: hope. The next morning, Sarah had to give her statement to Sheriff Thornton. She told him everything: the years of beatings, the terror, the desperate flight to freedom. It was humiliating to speak of it aloud, but Thornton listened with grave attention and took detailed notes. "Judge Cooper is due through town in 3 days," he said when she finished. "He will hear the case. Mitchell is claiming you are his legal wife and that he has the right to take you home, but the fact that he broke in here and attacked Cole Brennan is not going to sit well. There is also the matter of your injuries. Doc Matheson examined you and documented the bruises. That will carry weight." "What will happen to him?" Sarah asked. "Hard to say. Depends on the judge. But at minimum, he will spend some time in jail for assault, and if you want to file for divorce—" "I do," Thornton nodded. "Then we will arrange that as well." It is not common, but it can be done, especially given the circumstances. Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. A divorce. An actual legal end to the nightmare her marriage had become. It seemed too good to be true. She returned to work that afternoon, still shaken but determined to maintain her routine. Cole came into the restaurant around noon, his arm in a clean sling. He took a seat at the counter, and Sarah approached with her order pad, suddenly shy. "What can I get for you?" "Whatever Martha is serving today, and coffee if you have it." Sarah nodded and went to place the order. When she returned with his coffee, Cole was looking out the window at the street, his expression thoughtful. "How is your arm?" she asked. "Doc says it will heal fine. I have had worse." He looked up at her. "How are you doing?" "I am all right. Sheriff Thornton said there will be a hearing in 3 days. I heard I will be there to testify if you need me to." "You have already done so much, Sarah." He said her name gently. "I do not mind, truly." She studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or hidden motive, but found only sincerity. It was disconcerting to be around a man who seemed to have no agenda beyond simple kindness. "Why are you not married?" she blurted out, then immediately flushed. "I am sorry, that was rude." Cole smiled slightly. "It is all right. I suppose the answer is that I have been moving around too much to put down roots. Cattle drives, odd jobs, drifting from town to town. That is no life to offer a woman. Are you thinking about settling down? Maybe. Redemption seems like a good place." "Quiet, decent people." His eyes met hers. "Worth staying for." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She was not ready for this, for the way her pulse quickened when he looked at her, for the warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled. She was still legally married to Thomas, still broken from years of abuse. She had no business feeling drawn to any man, let alone one as good as Cole seemed to be. Martha called from the kitchen that his food was ready, and Sarah gratefully retreated to fetch it. She needed time to think, to process everything that was happening. Her life had changed so drastically in such a short time that she felt unmoored, adrift in unfamiliar waters. The 3 days before the hearing passed in a blur. Thomas remained locked up, though he sent messages through the deputy demanding that Sarah come to the jail and talk to him. She refused every time. Cole continued his work around town, but Sarah noticed he always seemed to be nearby when she was walking to or from the boarding house. She appreciated the unobtrusive protection, even as it made her feel guilty for taking up so much of his time and attention. The morning of the hearing, Henrietta helped Sarah into a borrowed dress of dark blue calico. It was simple but respectable, and it fit reasonably well. Sarah's bruises had faded to yellow-green, and the split on her lip had healed, but the evidence of Thomas's violence was still visible. The hearing was held in the town hall, with Judge Cooper presiding from behind a scarred wooden desk. He was an older man with white hair and shrewd eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Thomas sat on one side of the room with a court-appointed lawyer, while Sarah sat on the other with Cole and Henrietta behind her for support. The proceeding was straightforward. Sheriff Thornton testified about the break-in and assault. Doc Matheson testified about Sarah's injuries, producing sketches he had made documenting the extent of her bruises. Cole testified about what he had witnessed, both the night of the assault and Sarah's condition when she first arrived in town. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she forced herself to look directly at Judge Cooper and tell the truth. She described the pattern of abuse, the escalating violence, the fear that had become her constant companion. Thomas's lawyer tried to cross-examine her, suggesting she was exaggerating or that she had provoked her husband, but Judge Cooper shut that line of questioning down quickly. "I have seen the physical evidence, counselor. Unless you have proof that Mrs. Mitchell inflicted those injuries on herself, I suggest you move on." Finally, Thomas was allowed to speak in his own defense. He tried to claim that Sarah was hysterical, that he had only been trying to bring his wayward wife home, that Cole had attacked him unprovoked. But his story did not hold up under scrutiny, and Judge Cooper's expression grew increasingly stern. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said when Thomas finished, "I have been practicing law for 35 years, and I have heard every excuse imaginable for a man beating his wife. Yours are not even original. The evidence is clear that you repeatedly and severely assaulted Mrs. Mitchell over a period of years. The evidence is also clear that when she fled to safety, you tracked her down and broke into a private residence with the intent to forcibly abduct her. You then assaulted Mr. Brennan with a deadly weapon when he intervened to protect her. She is my wife," Thomas protested. "That does not give you the right to treat her like property." Judge Cooper's voice was hard as iron. "I am sentencing you to 1 year in jail for assault with a deadly weapon. Additionally, I am granting Mrs. Mitchell's petition for divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty. The marriage is hereby dissolved. You are to have no further contact with the former Mrs. Mitchell under any circumstances. If you violate this order, I will add additional charges. Do you understand?" Thomas's face went purple with rage. "You cannot do this." "The law, I am the law in this courtroom, Mr. Mitchell, and I have made my ruling. Sheriff, remove the prisoner." As Thornton and his deputy dragged a shouting Thomas from the room, Sarah sat frozen in her chair. It was over. She was free. After 4 years of living in hell, she was actually free. Tears began to stream down her face, and she covered her mouth with her hands to muffle the sobs. Henrietta immediately wrapped her in a hug, and Sarah felt Cole's steady presence behind her, not touching but there, solid and dependable. "It is all right now, child," Henrietta murmured. "You are safe. He cannot hurt you anymore." They returned to the boarding house, where Martha had prepared a celebration meal. Several townspeople stopped by to offer their congratulations and support, and Sarah was overwhelmed by their kindness. She had expected judgment and shame, but instead she found acceptance and understanding. Cole stayed at the edge of the gathering, giving her space but available if she needed him. As the evening wore on and people began to drift home, Sarah found herself standing on the porch with him, looking out at the darkening street. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything you did. I could never have survived this without you." "You are stronger than you think," Cole said. "You survived 4 years with that man. You found the courage to leave. You testified against him in court. That takes real strength, Sarah," she shook her head. "I was just running scared. Running scared is still running, still choosing to save yourself." He turned to face her. "What will you do now? Keep working at the restaurant. Keep living at the boarding house, I suppose. Try to build a life for myself." She looked up at him. "What about you?" "I took a job at the livery stable. Permanent position if I want it. Decent pay, room and board included." "So you are staying in Redemption, if that is all right with you." Sarah's breath caught. "Why would you need my permission?" Cole smiled slightly, a bit of color rising in his cheeks. "Well, I would not want to make you uncomfortable. I know you have been through a lot, and the last thing you need is some cowboy hanging around where he is not wanted." "You could never make me uncomfortable," Sarah said softly. "You saved my life, Cole." More than that, you treated me with kindness and respect when I had forgotten what those things felt like. I am grateful you are staying. Just grateful. The question was gentle, but there was something in his eyes that made Sarah's heart beat faster. She knew what he was asking, and she was not sure how to answer. Part of her wanted to throw caution to the wind, to tell him that she felt more than gratitude, that his smile made her feel warm inside and his presence made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. But another part of her was terrified. She had just escaped one marriage, and the thought of trusting another man with her heart seemed impossible. I do not know, she admitted. Cole, I care about you, but I am so broken right now, I do not know if I can be what you deserve. I am not asking you to be anything except yourself, Cole said. And I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give, but I want you to know that I care about you too, Sarah. More than I probably should, given how short a time we have known each other. And whenever you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here. Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes again. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. It is just the truth. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Sarah felt something shift inside her, some small part of her heart beginning to thaw and open. She was not ready for romance, not yet. But for the first time in years, she could imagine a future that included happiness. And maybe, just maybe, that future could include Cole. The weeks that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Sarah worked at the restaurant during the day and spent her evenings at the boarding house, often sitting on the porch with Henrietta and the other residents, talking and laughing in the cool night air. Cole came by most evenings after finishing at the livery stable, and gradually, Sarah grew comfortable with his presence. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He simply existed alongside her, steady and patient. They began taking walks together after dinner, strolling through town and out onto the prairie beyond. Cole told her stories about his cattle driving days, about the places he had seen and the people he had met. Sarah found herself laughing at his tales, something she had not done in so long that it felt foreign at first. In turn, she began to tell him about her life before Thomas. About growing up in Austin, where her father had run a successful dry goods store. About how she had loved to read and had dreamed of becoming a teacher. About how Thomas had seemed like a perfect gentleman during their courtship and how quickly that facade had crumbled after the wedding. You think you will teach someday? Cole asked one evening as they sat on a fallen log overlooking a creek. I do not know, Sarah said. I never finished my schooling, and who would hire me knowing my history? Lots of people, I would wager. You are smart and kind and good with people. The children would be lucky to have you. Sarah smiled. You have a lot of faith in me. You should have faith in yourself. He picked up a pebble and tossed it into the creek. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think about the future, about what you want your life to look like? Sarah considered the question carefully. I used to not think about the future at all. Every day with Thomas was just about surviving until the next day. But now, she paused, trying to find the right words. Now I think about a lot of things. I think about having a home that feels safe. I think about waking up without fear. I think about maybe having a family someday if I can ever trust myself to choose better than I did before. You were young when you married Thomas, and he lied to you about who he was. That was not your fault. I know that in my head. But my heart still struggles with it. Cole reached over and gently took her hand. It was the first time he had initiated physical contact since that first day, and Sarah's immediate instinct was to pull away. But she forced herself to be still, to let him hold her hand, and after a moment the panic subsided. His hand was warm and calloused from work, and his grip was gentle. You are one of the bravest people I have ever met, Cole said quietly. And I am honored that you trust me enough to let me be part of your life. Sarah looked at their joined hands, marveling at how something so simple could feel so profound. I am learning to trust you, she said. It is not easy, but I want to try. That is all I can ask for. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Sarah felt a sense of peace settling over her, fragile but real. She had spent so long in darkness that she had forgotten what light felt like. But here, with Cole beside her and freedom stretching out before her, she was beginning to remember. As summer turned to autumn, Sarah's confidence grew. She took on more responsibilities at the restaurant, and Martha began teaching her the business side of things, ordering supplies, managing accounts, dealing with vendors. Sarah discovered she had a head for numbers and organization, and she found the work deeply satisfying. She also began attending church on Sundays, something she had not done since leaving Austin. The minister, Reverend Hayes, was a gentle older man who preached about love and forgiveness rather than hellfire and damnation. Sarah found comfort in the services, and she began to reconnect with her faith, which had been badly shaken by her experiences with Thomas. Cole attended church as well, always sitting in the pew behind her. After services, they would walk back to town together, often stopping at the creek or wandering through the prairie grass. Their relationship deepened slowly, built on a foundation of trust and genuine affection. Cole never tried to kiss her or push for more than she was ready to give. He seemed content just to be near her, and Sarah was grateful for his patience. One crisp October afternoon, Cole took her to a piece of land about a mile outside of town. It was a beautiful spot, with a gentle rise overlooking the creek and a stand of oak trees that provided shade. The prairie grass waved in the breeze and wildflowers dotted the landscape. "What do you think?" Cole asked. "It is beautiful. Whose land is this?" "Mine. I bought it last week." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "You bought land?" Cole nodded, looking slightly nervous. "I have been saving my wages for a while now, and I had some money put aside from cattle drives. I figured if I am going to stay in Redemption, I should put down real roots, build something permanent." "What will you build?" "A house. Maybe a barn eventually if I decide to raise horses." The livery stable owner is getting older, and he has talked about selling the business in a few years. I am thinking about buying him out if I can save up enough. He turned to face her. "Sarah, I know it is too soon to talk about this, but I want you to know my intentions. I am building a life here, a real life, and I am hoping that someday, if you are willing, you might consider being part of it." Sarah's heart squeezed. "Cole, you do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "I am not proposing or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I am serious. About staying, about you, about us if there is going to be an us." Sarah took a deep breath. She had known for weeks now that her feelings for Cole had grown beyond friendship. She looked forward to seeing him every day. She thought about him when they were apart. She trusted him in a way she had never trusted anyone, not even her own father. But the idea of marriage, of legally binding herself to another man, still filled her with dread. "I care about you, Cole," she said carefully. "More than I thought I could care about anyone again. But the thought of marriage, it terrifies me. After Thomas—" "I understand," Cole said. "And I am not asking you to marry me today or tomorrow or even next year. I am just asking you to think about the possibility, to not close that door completely." "I can do that," Sarah said softly. "I can think about it." Cole smiled, and the relief on his face was palpable. "That is all I need." They walked the property together, with Cole pointing out where he planned to build the house and where the barn might go. He had clearly thought everything through carefully, and Sarah was touched by the way he asked for her opinions, genuinely wanting to know what she thought about various details. As the sun began to set and they turned back toward town, Sarah slipped her hand into Cole's. He looked down at their joined hands and then at her face, his eyes soft with affection. "Thank you for being patient with me," Sarah said. "Thank you for giving me a chance," Cole replied. Winter came to Redemption with cold winds and occasional snow. The restaurant slowed down a bit as travelers became less common, but there was still steady business from the townspeople. Sarah spent her evenings by the fire in the boarding house parlor, often sewing or reading while Henrietta knitted and told stories about the early days of Redemption. Cole came by almost every evening, sometimes staying for dinner, sometimes just sitting and talking for an hour or two. They played checkers and card games, with Henrietta and some of the other boarders joining in. It was comfortable and domestic, and Sarah found herself cherishing these quiet evenings. On Christmas Eve, the whole town gathered at the church for a special service. Afterward, there was a community supper in the town hall, with everyone bringing dishes to share. Sarah had made apple pies with Martha's help, and they were quickly devoured. Cole stayed close to her throughout the evening, introducing her to people she had not yet met and making sure she never felt alone in the crowd. As the party wound down and people began bundling up to brave the cold walk home, Cole pulled Sarah aside. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. "Cole, you did not need to. I wanted to." He pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Merry Christmas, Sarah." She unwrapped it carefully to find a book, a collection of poems by Walt Whitman. She opened the cover and found an inscription in Cole's neat handwriting. "For Sarah, who reminds me that there is beauty and hope in the world. With affection, Cole. Christmas 1876. Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me. You mentioned once that you liked poetry. I hope I remembered right. You did." She clutched the book to her chest. "Thank you, Cole. Truly, you are welcome." He hesitated, then added, "There is something else I want to ask you." "What is it?" "Will you come see the house? I have been working on it with some help from the men at the livery, and the basic structure is up now. I would like your opinion on some things if you are willing." "Of course." "I would love to see it." They arranged to go the following afternoon, Christmas Day. The weather was cold but clear, and they rode out to Cole's land in a borrowed wagon. Sarah gasped when she saw the house. It was not large, but it was well built and thoughtfully designed, with a wide front porch and big windows to let in light. "The roof is on and the walls are up," Cole explained as he helped her down from the wagon. "I still need to finish the interior, but it should be livable by spring." They went inside and Cole showed her around. The main room was spacious, with a large fireplace on one wall. There was a kitchen area with room for a proper stove and 2 bedrooms off the main space. It was simple but solid, the kind of house that could become a real home. "What do you think?" Cole asked, watching her face anxiously. "I think it is perfect," Sarah said honestly. "You have done beautiful work, Cole. I am glad you like it." He took a deep breath. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "All right." "Do you think someday you could see yourself living here? With me?" Sarah's heart began to pound. This was the question she had been both hoping for and dreading. She looked around at the house Cole had built with his own hands, imagining what it would look like with furniture and curtains and all the small touches that made a house a home. She imagined waking up here, safe and warm. She imagined Cole beside her, steady and kind. And for the first time, the idea did not fill her with panic. Instead, she felt something that might have been excitement. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think I could." Cole's face lit up. Really, I am not ready yet, Cole. I need more time, but I can see it. I can see a future with you, and that is something I never thought I would be able to say again." "That is enough for me," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than enough." He reached out and gently cupped her face with his hand, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. But Sarah did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes and letting herself feel safe. When she opened her eyes again, Cole was looking at her with such tenderness that it made her chest ache. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. Sarah's breath caught. She had not been kissed gently since before her marriage to Thomas, and the idea was both terrifying and thrilling. But she trusted Cole. She knew in her bones that he would never hurt her. "Yes," she whispered. Cole leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When his lips finally met hers, it was gentle and sweet, a kiss that spoke of affection and respect rather than possession or demand. Sarah's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. The kiss lasted only a few seconds, but when they pulled apart, Sarah felt like something fundamental had shifted between them. "Was that all right?" Cole asked. "It was perfect," Sarah said, and meant it. They stood in the empty house, holding each other as the winter sun streamed through the windows. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks, but for once they were happy tears. She had never imagined feeling this way again, safe and cherished and full of hope for the future. The rest of the winter passed in a blur of quiet contentment. Sarah and Cole continued their courtship, growing closer with each passing week. In February, Sarah moved into a small apartment above the restaurant when Martha offered it to her at a reduced rent. Having her own space felt like another step toward independence, and she took great joy in decorating it with second-hand furniture and small touches that made it feel like home. Cole continued working on his house, and Sarah began helping him with some of the finishing touches. She made curtains for the windows and chose paint colors for the walls. They spent long afternoons working side by side, talking about everything and nothing, building not just a house but a life together. In March, almost exactly a year after Sarah had first stumbled into redemption, Cole officially asked her to marry him. They were sitting on the porch of his completed house, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, taking both her hands in his. "You are the strongest, kindest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You have been through hell and come out the other side, and I am in awe of you. I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at this good man who had shown her what real love looked like, who had been patient and gentle and respectful, who had helped her heal and grow and rediscover herself. The fear that had once gripped her heart when she thought about marriage had faded, replaced by certainty. "Yes," she said, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." Cole let out a whoop of joy and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until they were both laughing and dizzy. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, and Sarah kissed him back with all the love and gratitude in her heart. They were married in late April, in the same church where Sarah had found solace and peace. Reverend Hayes performed the ceremony, and it seemed like the entire town turned out to witness it. Henrietta stood with Sarah as her matron of honor, and the livery stable owner stood with Cole as his best man. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. When it came time for the vows, Cole looked into Sarah's eyes and spoke from the heart. "Sarah, I promise to love you and cherish you for all of my days. I promise to be patient and kind. I promise to listen when you speak and to value your opinions. I promise to be your partner, not your master. I promise to never raise my hand to you in anger and to always lower it in love. I promise to build a life with you that is filled with joy and safety and peace. This I swear before God and these witnesses." Sarah was crying openly by the time he finished. When it was her turn, she took a shaky breath and spoke the words she had been practicing for weeks. "Cole, you saved my life in more ways than one. You showed me what real love looks like, and you gave me back my faith in goodness. I promise to love you with all my heart, to stand beside you in good times and bad, to support your dreams and build new ones with you. I promise to be honest and faithful and true. I promise to trust you with my heart, which is the bravest thing I can do, and I know it is safe with you. This I swear before God and these witnesses." When Reverend Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Sarah gently, and the church erupted in applause. They walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, both of them beaming. The reception was held at Martha's restaurant, which had been decorated with wildflowers and ribbons. There was food and music and dancing, and Sarah felt more joy than she had thought possible. She danced with Cole, with Sheriff Thornton, with Doc Matheson, with every man who asked and whose presence did not frighten her. It was a celebration not just of her marriage, but of her freedom and her new life. As the evening wore on and the party began to wind down, Cole whisked Sarah away to the house. Their house now, where he carried her over the threshold amid much laughter and teasing from their friends. Once the door was closed behind them and they were finally alone, Cole set her gently on her feet. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Brennan?" Sarah smiled at her new name. "Happy, nervous, excited, all of it at once." "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for," Cole said seriously. "We can just sleep tonight if you would rather." Sarah appreciated his consideration more than she could say, but she was ready for this. Ready to finally put the past behind her and embrace her future completely. "I want this," she said. "I want you. I am ready." Cole searched her face, making sure she meant it, then nodded. He took her hand and led her to the bedroom, where he proceeded to show her with infinite patience and gentleness what lovemaking could be, when it was built on respect and true affection. It was nothing like her experiences with Thomas, and Sarah found herself crying again, overwhelmed by the tenderness and care Cole showed her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, the moonlight streaming through the windows. "I love you," Sarah whispered. "I know I do not say it enough, but I do. I love you so much." "I love you too," Cole murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And I will spend every day of the rest of my life showing you." The first year of their marriage was everything Sarah had hoped for and more. Cole was an attentive and loving husband, and they fell into an easy rhythm of domestic life. Sarah continued working at the restaurant part-time, not because they needed the money, but because she enjoyed it. Cole bought the livery stable from its retiring owner, and the business thrived under his management. They made friends among the townspeople and became fixtures in the community. Sarah started teaching Sunday school at the church, discovering that she loved working with children. Cole served on the town council and helped organize a volunteer fire brigade. They were building exactly the kind of life Sarah had once thought impossible. In the spring of 1878, Sarah realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with a complicated mix of emotions. She was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a mother, but she was also terrified. What if she was a bad parent? What if she passed on the damage Thomas had done to her? What if something went wrong? Cole was there to reassure her every step of the way. He read books about pregnancy and childbirth, asked Doc Matheson endless questions, and did everything he could to make Sarah comfortable. When she had nightmares about Thomas finding them and hurting their child, Cole held her and reminded her that Thomas was gone, serving out the last months of his jail sentence hundreds of miles away and forbidden by law from ever contacting her again. Their son was born in November of 1878, a healthy baby with Cole's dark hair and Sarah's blue eyes. They named him Henry, after Cole's father, who had died years before. Holding her son for the first time, Sarah felt a fierce protective love she had not known was possible. She looked at Cole, who was gazing at their baby with wonder and tears in his eyes, and felt her heart swell with gratitude for the life they had built together. "He is perfect," Cole whispered, "just like his mother." "He has your nose," Sarah said, laughing through her own tears. "Poor kid." They settled into parenthood with relative ease. Cole was a devoted father, waking up for late-night feedings and diaper changes without complaint. He sang to Henry, played with him, and wore him in a sling while working at the livery so Sarah could get some rest. Sarah had worried she might not have maternal instincts, but they came naturally, and she found deep joy in caring for their son. Time passed in a sweet blur. Henry grew from a baby into a curious toddler, then a bright little boy. In 1881, Sarah gave birth to their daughter, whom they named Emma after Cole's beloved sister. Emma was a happy, laughing child from the start, and she brought even more joy into their home. In 1883, Sarah finally fulfilled her old dream and became a teacher. The town had grown enough to need a second schoolroom, and Sarah was hired to teach the younger children. She proved to be a natural educator, patient and creative, and her students adored her. Cole often brought Henry and Emma by after school, and Sarah would watch him playing with their children in the schoolyard, her heart full to bursting with love. They added a third child in 1885, another boy they named James. By then, The livery stable had expanded into a successful horse breeding operation, and Cole was one of the most respected businessmen in Redemption. Sarah had published several articles about teaching methods in educational journals and had been asked to speak at a conference in Dallas about rural education. One evening in the summer of 1886, Sarah and Cole sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done so many times before. Henry was 9 now, playing in the yard with Emma and James. The sound of their children's laughter drifted on the warm breeze. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Sarah asked, her hand in Cole's. "What do you mean?" "If you had not been in Redemption that day I arrived, if you had not followed your instinct when Thomas came to the boarding house, if you had not been so patient and kind with me." Cole squeezed her hand. "But I was there. And I would not change a single thing about how our story unfolded, except maybe I wish I could have spared you the pain of what came before." "I do not know if I would change that either," Sarah said slowly. "As terrible as it was, it made me who I am. It taught me what real love looks like by showing me what it is not, and it brought me here to you, to this life. I would endure it all again if I knew this was waiting at the end. You are the strongest person I know," Cole said softly. "I am strong because you believed I was strong, even when I did not believe it myself." Sarah turned to look at him, this man who had saved her and then spent years showing her how to save herself. "I love you, Cole Brennan, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person." "I love you too, Sarah Brennan. Always have, always will." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching their children play as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of gold and pink. Sarah thought about that terrified woman who had stumbled into Redemption a decade ago, broken and certain she would never be whole again. She thought about the cowboy who had seen her flinch when he raised his hand, who had lowered it slow and said, "I won't ever hit," and had kept that promise every single day since. She thought about all the moments between then and now, the slow building of trust, the gradual healing, the discovery that love could be gentle and safe and true. She thought about the life they had built together, brick by brick and day by day, until they had created something beautiful and lasting. "Mama, Papa, come play with us," Emma called from the yard, and Sarah and Cole exchanged a smile. "Coming, sweetheart," Cole called back. They rose from the porch and walked hand in hand into the golden evening light, toward their children and their future. Behind them, the house Cole had built with his own hands stood solid and strong, a testament to patience and faith and the redemptive power of love. The scars of Sarah's past had not disappeared. They would always be part of her story, but they no longer defined her. She was not just a survivor anymore. She was a wife, a mother, a teacher, a woman who had learned that it was possible to rise from the ashes of trauma and build something beautiful. And as she chased her laughing children across the prairie grass, with Cole's hand warm in hers and joy singing in her heart, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found her way home. The years continued to unfold with the steady rhythm of a life well lived. Henry grew into a thoughtful young man with his father's quiet strength and his mother's compassion. He showed an aptitude for working with horses that delighted Cole, and by the time he was 15, he was handling much of the day-to-day operation of the breeding business. Emma inherited Sarah's love of learning and her father's determination, and she announced at 12 years old that she intended to become a doctor, a bold ambition for a girl in 1888, but one that her parents supported wholeheartedly. James was the wild one, always getting into mischief, but his sunny disposition and infectious laugh made it impossible to stay angry with him for long. In 1889, Sarah was offered the position of head teacher at the Redemption Schoolhouse, with responsibility for all grades. It was a significant honor, and she accepted with pride. Cole celebrated by taking the whole family on a trip to San Antonio, where they stayed in a hotel and saw the Alamo and ate at restaurants and generally had a wonderful adventure. It was the first real vacation any of them had taken, and they made memories that would last a lifetime. The town of Redemption itself continued to grow and prosper. The railroad came through in 1890, bringing new opportunities for commerce and travel. Sheriff Thornton retired, and his deputy took over the position. Doc Matheson trained a younger physician to take over his practice, though he still consulted on difficult cases. Martha sold her restaurant to Lucy, who ran it with the same warmth and efficiency. Henrietta passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1891, and Sarah wept for the woman who had been like a mother to her. The entire town turned out for the funeral, and Sarah gave a eulogy that had everyone in tears as she spoke about Henrietta's kindness and strength, and the way she had helped so many women find safety and new beginnings. Through it all, Sarah and Cole's love remained constant. They had their disagreements, of course. No marriage is perfect, but they had learned how to communicate honestly and work through problems together. Cole never once raised his voice in anger to Sarah, and true to his promise, he never raised his hand to her except in gentleness. Sarah had long since healed from the physical and emotional trauma of her first marriage, though occasional nightmares still troubled her sleep. But Cole was always there to hold her and remind her that she was safe. In 1893, Henry announced his engagement to a sweet young woman named Catherine who worked at the dry goods store. The wedding was held in the spring of 1894, and Sarah cried happy tears as she watched her firstborn son promise to love and cherish his bride. Cole squeezed her hand and whispered, "He learned from the best how to treat a wife right," and Sarah's heart swelled with pride. Emma left for medical school in Philadelphia in 1895, one of only a handful of women accepted to the program. The day they saw her off at the train station was bittersweet. Sarah was immensely proud but also heartbroken to see her daughter leave. Cole reminded her that they had raised Emma to be independent and strong, and that her pursuing her dreams was the highest compliment they could receive as parents. James eventually settled down a bit and discovered a talent for woodworking. By 16, he was crafting beautiful furniture that people came from miles around to purchase. He built Sarah a rocking chair for her birthday that was so lovely it made her cry, and he built Cole a desk for his office that was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. In 1897, Henry and Catherine made Sarah and Cole grandparents for the first time, with the birth of a little girl they named Sarah in honor of her grandmother. Holding her namesake for the first time, Sarah felt the circle of life complete itself. She thought about the terrified, broken woman she had been when she first came to Redemption, and marveled at the fullness of the life she had built. She had a husband who adored her, children who had grown into remarkable adults, and now a grandchild to spoil and love. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, watching her rock baby Sarah with a tender expression. "How blessed I am," Sarah said simply. "How far I have come, how grateful I am for every single day of this life we have built together." "I am the blessed one," Cole said. "You gave me a family, you gave me a home. You gave me purpose. We gave those things to each other." Cole leaned down and kissed her forehead, then gently touched his granddaughter's tiny hand. "I love you, Sarah Brennan. I love you too, Cole Brennan, today and always." The turn of the century brought changes to Redemption and to the Brennan family. The town modernized, with electric lights installed on Main Street and plans drawn up for a proper hospital. Emma returned from medical school in 1900 with her degree and shocked everyone by announcing she was staying in Redemption to open her own practice. She became the first female doctor in the county, and Sarah could not have been prouder. James married in 1901, choosing a spirited redhead named Anna who matched his energy perfectly. Their wedding was a raucous celebration that lasted late into the night, with dancing and music and joy. Henry and Catherine gave Sarah and Cole 2 more grandchildren, twin boys born in 1902. Between Henry's 3 children and the 2 that James and Anna had by 1905, Sarah and Cole found themselves presiding over a large and boisterous extended family. Sunday dinners at their house became legendary, with children running everywhere and love and laughter filling every corner. In 1906, on their 29th wedding anniversary, Cole took Sarah back to the place where he had first shown her the land he had bought all those years ago. The oak trees had grown tall and strong, and the prairie grass waved in the breeze just as it had 3 decades before. "Do you remember standing here with me?" Cole asked. "When I told you I was building a life and hoped you would be part of it?" "I remember being terrified and hopeful at the same time," Sarah said. "I wanted so badly to believe in the possibility of happiness, but I was so scared. And now I know that taking that chance was the best decision I ever made. You have given me everything, Cole, a life beyond my wildest dreams." Cole pulled a small box from his pocket. "I have something for you." Sarah opened it to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny photograph of them from their wedding day, impossibly young and radiantly happy. "To remind you of where we started," Cole said, "and to celebrate where we are now." Sarah threw her arms around him, this man who had loved her so completely and so well for nearly 30 years. "I do not need reminders. Every day with you is a gift I treasure." They stood in the place where their life together had truly begun, holding each other as they had done countless times before. The years had left their marks. Cole's hair was mostly gray now, and Sarah's face bore the lines of a life fully lived. But the love between them was as strong as ever. As the sun set over the Texas prairie, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Sarah thought about the long and winding path that had brought her to this moment. She thought about pain and healing, about fear and courage, about the broken woman she had been and the whole, happy woman she had become. She thought about the day a cowboy saw her flinch when he raised his hand, and how he had lowered it slow and said, "I won't ever hit." How that simple moment of compassion had changed everything. How one man's kindness and patience had given her back her life and her hope and her ability to love. And she thought about all the years that had followed, each one building on the last, creating a legacy of love that would outlive them both. Their children and grandchildren would carry forward the lessons they had learned, about respect and kindness, about the true meaning of love, about the strength it takes to heal and the courage it takes to trust again. "What are you smiling about?" Cole asked. "Everything," Sarah said. "Absolutely everything." He kissed her then, there in the golden light of the setting sun, and Sarah kissed him back with all the love and gratitude in her heart. They had been given a second chance at happiness, and they had made the most of every single day. The story of Sarah and Cole Brennan became something of a legend in redemption. When new women arrived in town fleeing bad situations, they were often told about Sarah, how she had come to town battered and broken, how she had found safety and healing, how she had built a beautiful life. Sarah herself became a quiet advocate for women in difficult circumstances, helping them find work and housing and the support they needed to start over. Cole, for his part, became known as a man of integrity and compassion. He mentored young men in the community, teaching them that real strength was in gentleness, not violence. That being a good husband meant partnership and respect, not dominance and control. As they moved into their 60s and then their 70s, Sarah and Cole slowed down but never stopped living fully. They traveled a bit, visiting Emma in Philadelphia and taking a trip to Colorado to see the mountains. They spoiled their grandchildren outrageously and loved watching them grow. They sat on their porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. In 1915, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary with a party that the whole town attended. Their children and grandchildren gave speeches, talking about the example their parents and grandparents had set, about the love that had sustained their family through good times and hard times. Henry spoke about watching his father treat his mother with unfailing kindness and learning what a real man should be. Emma spoke about her mother's courage and how it had inspired her to pursue her own dreams. James spoke about the home his parents had created, a place of safety and love and laughter. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she stood up on slightly shaky legs and looked around at the gathering, her family, her friends, her community. She looked at Cole, who was watching her with the same love in his eyes that he had shown her 40 years before. "When I came to Redemption in 1876, I was running for my life," she said quietly. "I had given up on the idea of happiness. I thought I was broken beyond repair. And then I met a cowboy who showed me what real love looks like, who was patient when I needed patience, gentle when I needed gentleness, and strong when I needed strength. Cole Brennan gave me back my life, and then he spent the next 40 years making that life beautiful." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "If there is one thing I want our children and grandchildren to remember, it is this. Real love is not about power or control. It is about respect and kindness. It is about being someone safe. It is about keeping your promises, even the hard ones. It is about choosing every single day to be gentle." Cole saw me flinch when he raised his hand, and he lowered it slow and said, "I won't ever hit," and he never did. Not once in 40 years. That is the kind of love worth having. That is the kind of love worth being. There was not a dry eye in the room by the time she finished. Cole stood and took her hand, and they shared a kiss that spoke of 40 years of love and commitment and partnership. The years continued to pass as years do. Sarah and Cole's health began to fail, as is natural with age. They faced each challenge together, just as they always had. When Cole had a heart scare in 1918, Sarah nursed him back to health with fierce determination. When Sarah's vision began to fail, Cole read to her every evening, just as she had once read to their children. They remained in their home, the house Cole had built with his own hands all those years ago. Their children tried to convince them to move into town where it would be easier to care for them, but Sarah and Cole refused. This was their home, the place where they had built their life together, and they wanted to spend their remaining time here. In the spring of 1921, Cole became seriously ill. He was 84 years old, and even Doc Matheson's apprentice, Doc Matheson himself had passed away years before, admitted there was little to be done. Sarah, now 71 herself, refused to leave his bedside. "I am not ready to let you go," she whispered, holding his hand. "I know, my love," Cole said weakly. "But I have had a good life, a wonderful life, because of you, because of us," Sarah corrected. "We built it together. Promise me you will be all right. Promise me you will not give up." "I promise, but you have to promise me something too. Anything. Promise me that when my time comes, you will be waiting for me, that we will find each other again." Cole smiled. "I will be waiting. And when you arrive, I will take your hand just like I did that first day, and I will never let go." He died peacefully that night, with Sarah holding his hand and their children gathered around them. Sarah was devastated but not destroyed. She had learned long ago that she was strong enough to survive anything, even this. She lived for 7 more years, cared for by her children and grandchildren. She continued teaching Sunday school when she was able, and she spent long hours on the porch of the house Cole had built, remembering and giving thanks. She wrote down her story, wanting future generations to know about the love she had found and the life she had built. In the summer of 1928, as Sarah lay dying at the age of 78, surrounded by her family, she smiled. "What is it, Mama?" Emma asked, holding her mother's hand. "I can see him," Sarah whispered. "He is waiting for me, just like he promised." And with those words, Sarah Mitchell Brennan closed her eyes for the last time, her face peaceful and her heart full. She was laid to rest beside Cole in the Redemption Cemetery under a spreading oak tree. Their shared headstone bore a simple inscription: "Cole and Sarah Brennan, beloved husband and wife, parents and grandparents, real love is gentle." 1837 to 1921, and 1850 to 1928, the house they had built still stands to this day, occupied now by their great-great-grandchildren. The story of the cowboy who saw her flinch and lowered his hand in peace is still told in Redemption, passed down through generations as a reminder of what love should be. of the courage it takes to heal, of the power of gentleness, of the beauty that can grow from the darkest beginnings. Sarah and Cole's legacy lived on in their descendants, who carried forward the lessons they had learned. Henry's granddaughter became a prominent advocate for women's rights. Emma's son followed in her footsteps and became a doctor who specialized in helping trauma survivors. James's great-granddaughter wrote a book about her great-grandmother's life that became a bestseller and inspired countless women to leave abusive situations. The Brennan family reunions, held every 5 years on the grounds of the original homestead, drew family members from across the country. They gathered to celebrate their heritage and to remember the remarkable love story that had started it all. The story of a broken woman who found the courage to run, and the good man who showed her that not all men are cruel, that some promises are kept. That real love, true love, is built on respect and kindness and the choice, made every single day to be gentle. And if you listen carefully on a quiet evening in Redemption, Texas, some say you can still hear the echo of laughter from the house on the prairie, where a cowboy and his wife built a life filled with love and raised a family that would change the world, one act of kindness at a time. Their story had ended, but their love, gentle, patient, and true, lived on forever, a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever needed to believe that healing is possible and that happy endings do exist. The love between Sarah and Cole Brennan was not perfect, for no human love can be perfect. But it was real and honest and good. It was built on a foundation of trust earned slowly and carefully. It was sustained by daily choices to be kind, to be patient, to see and value each other. It was strengthened by facing challenges together and celebrating victories as one. And it all began with a simple moment of compassion. A cowboy who saw a woman flinch when he raised his hand, who lowered it slow and said, "I won't ever hit," and who spent the rest of his life proving that some promises are sacred. That was the beginning. And the love that grew from that moment of gentleness echoed through generations, proof that even the smallest acts of kindness can change the world.